The good Tutee and the role of dialogue, identifying patterns of acquisition and participation in talk between novice literacy specialists and a struggling reader. The analysis of the study that we did in this paper looked at the dialogue between the graduate students in the clinic and student participations, specifically their patterns of interaction. Though Mary has already highlighted the context of this study, I wanted to reprint it here because it was important, because it too had an influence on the interaction patterns that were enacted. Let me introduce you to our participants, Miss Baxter and Miss Green, both teachers with classroom experience, and Andy, our first grade learner. As previously stated, the focus of our research was on their interaction patterns within the one-to-one tutoring session during reading activities. We went back to the literature to better understand the one-to-one tutoring situation, and we learned that cognitive engagement positively correlates with student growth in reading comprehension. Also having a positive impact is cognitive apprenticeship, but it is the active aspects of the apprenticeship, not just the modeling, that has the positive correlation with learning. We also saw the importance of constructive enactment of remediation for students' misconceptions. It's the dialogue around some misconceptions that students have with an adult or a peer that really help them to understand better where their errors are and to correct that thinking. Also, corrective feedback without that elaboration was not supportive of student learning. With that research in mind, we looked at our data. We purposely analyzed 375 minutes of video and transcribed that interaction that took place around reading, be it discrete reading of words or text reading. The video represented the beginning, the middle, and the end of the 15-week tutoring sessions. We also analyzed the reflection documents that the teachers wrote about those 3 sessions. The secondary data sources were the diagnostic testing that was conducted with Andy and the resulting instructional plan and midterm education plan. Our questions were, what are the interactive frames that literacy clinicians rely upon in their tutoring of a student in the clinic setting? And also, what are the interactive frames that the student utilized in the clinic setting when working with the pre-service literacy teachers? Goffman informed our work and helped us define our terms. Interactive frames are frames through which people structure experience. And from Goffman's definition, it involves both participation and interpretation. Script is an interactive frame that deals with planned or enacted dialogue delivered within a particular structure, and we saw that as the participation aspect of the interactive frame. Role is the syntactical relations among the acts of different persons mutually present to one another, and we saw that being one of interpretation. Inherent in the script is that enacted dialogue, and important in the role is that syntactical relationship. We began our coding with open coding, and we determined our patterns of dialogue and our constructs. We then went back into the literature to see what we could determine was affecting those dialogue patterns and the constructs we were seeing. What we also learned was that these patterns were not mutually exclusive. They informed each other, and you will be able to see that in our examples from the sessions in the following slides. The first construct we will look at is instructional scripts. The two we saw most often that were the initiate response evaluation script, which we refer to as a three-step tutoring script, and to the one-to-one sequence, which is the tutoring script which really highlights the corrective feedback with elaboration that Kai, Roy, and Hausman highlighted in their research. Here is an example of the IRE script. Yet we also identify something else is happening with the instructional strategies being utilized. In the previous slide, we saw the IRE sequence, but we also saw the nudging, which we came to understand as hinting. What do you know about him? He loves what? Asks Miss Baxter. Teachers use hinting to help students remember previously held knowledge. The other instructional strategy we saw was scaffolding, which is for the purposes of achieving a goal that is beyond the student's unassisted efforts. Therefore, teachers use hinting, again, for previously held knowledge, and scaffolding to help a student gain new knowledge. In this example, we see the five-step tutoring script. We see hinting at the end of the example, and we see the three-step script from our first example. Again, as I previously mentioned, our scripts and our instructional strategies don't happen in isolation. In the analysis of the dialogue patterns and interaction frames between the graduate student and Andy, we began to recognize the construct of the belief systems. Therefore, we went back to the literature, to Safford's 1998 article, where she describes the acquisition and participation metaphors. We saw the teachers and Andy approximating participation, but often in the service of acquisition. Acquisition is about knowledge accumulation, whereas participation is about appropriating the discourse for that community. In this before reading exchange, we see the 5-step tutoring sequence and the scaffolding for participation. The teacher is clearly preparing Andy to do a retell after he completes the story. In the last example, we saw Andy say, "I forgot for real," and this time he already has something to tell about the story that he hasn't even read yet. So we really did see Andy as wanting to participate. Let's see what happens after Andy is finished reading the story and the teacher and Andy's exchange. So in this example, this looks like participation from Andy, but here he follows the acquisition metaphor. Baxter uses the 5-step sequence and hints at what she wants. Andy does produce, but look at what happens in line 162. And after Andy has done his part, he has given his answer, and he wants to know what writing they're going to do next, because that is part of their sequence of activities. He isn't participating any longer, and the teacher is forced to do a quick summary and move on. So we looked at this and saw that there was lots of things were happening, and we had to go back and figure out what else was informing this interaction and this pattern of dialogue that we kept seeing. We went back to the coding and asked what else was going on. We came up with the learner roles. The struggling reader. Remember Andy's "I forgot for real" and "I have something"? They are the markers of a struggling reader. Active readers or learners, on the other hand, test their understanding and make connections to the topics at hand. They please teachers, but they are not teacher pleasers per se. This is another example of Andy's marker as a struggling reader. Here he gives what he thinks to be what the teacher wants to hear, that his favorite activity is reading a book. And when she questions him further about what book it was that he enjoyed reading, he forgot. Kai, Roy, and Hausman's 2008 study on various tutoring situations helped us as we attempted to fully understand the impact of the interaction frames that we saw and the dialogue patterns that we were seeing between Andy and his teachers. Good Tutees are those that make substantive contributions. And through these substantive contributions, students' learning is increased. This leads to issues of engagements, which Mary will be presenting in the next paper. Given this analysis, we know we need to do some reframes in the clinic setting to make sure that we are exploiting the ability for tutees to make substantive contributions. We need to make sure that we are explicitly teaching the 3-step and 5-step sequence to our pre-service teachers and directly showing them how to handle the misconception dialogue in order to help students elaborate their answers. And the second reframe we have to look at is the type and the amount of Tutee participation. Again, trying to be more thoughtful and tracking exactly. Therefore, we are left with some remaining questions. The first two questions are rhetorical. Andy's teacher-pleasing behaviors were noted in the diagnostic assessment. However, no goal was specifically indicated to deal with that. The next two questions are specific for future research on understanding how to promote and support substantive contributions by tutees so that they all are good.